Village School District Board of Education regular meeting for January. It is January 20th at 6 o'clock, and we are ready to go. Mr. Gray, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Combs?
Yes.
Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes. Okay, let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, next order of business, I need a motion for approval of the agenda and the addendum as presented.
So moved. Second?
Discussion? Any additional items? Hearing none, call the roll.
Mr. Combs?
Yes.
Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes, thank you. We now go to the approval of the minutes for the regular board meeting, December 16th. I need a motion to approve those minutes as written.
So moved. Second?
Discussion? None, call the roll.
Mr. Combs?
Yes.
Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
Yep.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes, thank you. Now going to turn the meeting over for presentations to Superintendent John Spicer.
Thank you, President Miranda, members of the board. This evening, we do have a few presentations. We have some Mulberry artwork and student council, but I'd first like to introduce Mr. Josh Kaufman, our Director of Fine Arts Extracurricular Activities.
Good evening. I'd like to once again thank the Board of Education for the opportunity to highlight the incredible arts that occur throughout our district. This evening, we are really excited to recognize student artwork from Mulberry Elementary. We have their art teacher, Mrs. Kat Winslow, here. Oh, there she is. As well as Principal Greb is here as well to recognize our young student artists. You may have recognized over the last several months, in athletics for so many years, we've referred to our athletes as student athletes. And we're really making a concerted effort to refer to our artists as student artists or student musicians to really emphasize the fact that they're balancing both of those worlds at the same time. So congratulations to this month's student artists. Elena Callahan. Please, yes. Elena is ill this evening. The artwork is in order here. Nora Stowe. Nora? Nora is one of our fine first graders. Peyton Kaiser. Peyton, congratulations. Anna Rhodes. Anna, congratulations. There you go. Henry Morrell, I believe, could not make it this evening. Olivia Baker. Olivia, congratulations. Caitlin Benjamin. Caitlin, congratulations. Teddy Bailey. And Teddy's artwork is the one that's not in order. If you look behind you or ahead of you, board members, Dr. Dunn is pointing to the portrait that Teddy did of one of our board members, Mrs. Nolan. So. And then Kaylee Souter, who I do believe could not make it this evening. So congratulations to our student artists at Mulberry. And I'd like to share one more kind of celebration with the board this evening before I turn it over to some of our student leaders that will share some of the happenings at the high school. Ideally, each month I've got some incredible news to share in the world of arts, and we're 2 for 2 over the last 2 months. As you may be aware, the conductor of the Cincinnati Pops Orchestra, John Morris Russell, is very well known throughout the country and throughout the region. And each year, John Morris Russell selects a very small number of high school bands that he will come and personally work with and rehearse. And I am very pleased, you are the first to hear this, Mr. Spicer heard it earlier this week, John Morris Russell will be coming to Milford High School to work with our wind ensemble this spring on May 7th. So he hand-selected our program based on its track record and commitment to excellence. So we are very excited to have John Morris Russell. And finally, we are reinstituting kind of an old tradition that we had that was on temporary pause, where we are going to have each month some representatives from the High School Student Council report to the board on some of the happenings that are going on with the student body and specifically in the world of student leadership at our high school. So tonight, I'd like to recognize and invite up Tate Gormley and Emma Likens, who will share with you the happenings of the Milford High School Student Council.
Hi, good evening, board. Thank you for giving us the time to present about Student Council. Currently, Student Council has 85 members representing the student body at our monthly meetings. We have organized into 4 permanent groups, committees if you will, to pursue the goals of the student body. Those being student voice, school culture, faculty relations, and school improvements. In regards to upcoming projects, we are in the beginning phases of creating a student leadership center in our building, which is a dedicated space in the high school for student-led organizations. This will involve just really a space for groups who want to congregate and pursue anything they want in regards to the school. We are in the process of reorganizing and reconfiguring our storage space as an option for this available space.
And then for our upcoming projects for second semester, we are firstly starting to do a fundraiser next week for the Special Olympics. Next, we're doing a potential candygrams during the month of February, where you can send a little gift to your friend during the Valentine's week. We're starting the process of maybe doing a movie night in the gym after a basketball game. Just for students to have fun and kind of relax after a game. And then following, later in the year, we're doing an Inclusion Week, and we're doing an Embrace the Differences dance, which will be for our students with special needs to kind of have a dance of their own to where they can really thrive and have a great time. And then later in the year, we're thinking about doing a talent show, which will be partnered with the Milford Choirs. We're really excited about our upcoming projects, and we thank you for your time.
Thank you, Tate and Emma, and I just want to commend the leadership of Student Council. When they spoke about a Student Leadership Center, this will be a hub which all of our student leadership groups can use, Student Council, class officers, things like that, and it is being 100% funded by the funds that they have raised through their fundraisers throughout the year. So no district funds will go to that. It'll be entirely supported through their fundraising efforts. So well done on a project that will serve the entire school population. Thank you, Mr. Yeah.
Can we get them to come back up and plug the Special Olympics a little bit more specifically what that is, so that we can maybe get some more donations?
Sure. Are you comfortable doing that?
Megan
on the spot
Davidson
there, Mr. Spicer.
Megan Davidson could also help out.
I think so, yeah.
Explain a little bit about the change board and what the Special Olympics is.
Yeah. So the Special Olympics is kind of a group for our special needs students to kind of participate in athletic type events where they can compete against each other and other schools to kind of have fun and do something, because they're capable of as much of anyone else of athletic events. So.
And the change board at the high school for next week. You're going to be doing a change board at the high school next week.
I think another committee of student council is working on it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Whoa. So next week at the high school, kids will be doing by class a grade level change board, and then the winning class will get to help pick out what Mr. Spicer is going to wear for his big plunge on January 29th. So that'll be held at the Cincinnati Banks, and he's going to dive in. Sounds like a really
yes,
great
absolutely. We're going to do a polar plunge. Excited for that opportunity. No one else will do it with me, but that's okay.
I mean,
for a
we
great
wouldn't want to
cause.
show him up.
And I've been
He's
wanting
the
to do it.
leader. It's just appropriate for him to be solo.
I've been wanting to do it for over a year now, so this will be a great opportunity for us to highlight our students and Special Olympics as well.
And we're considered what's called a unified champion school, so we have certain projects and criteria to meet to keep that title. What that is making sure we have leadership opportunities for students with disabilities alongside of their typical peers. So we have unified track, unified sound, and unified cheer right now. So you've probably seen at different events all students participating, and a lot of the leadership comes from the student council to make sure these events happen. So that's helping us keep our fulfillment of those requirements and also being good models for our students that we are Milford Means Hall.
And where can people find the opportunity to donate the site that you set up
On
for Special
Twitter
Olympics?
right now, both Mr. Spicer and I have sent out the donations site. He has his own website for donations for the Polar Bear Plunge. If I could also send that out to you board members, we can also post that, maybe Melinda, on our social media, Facebook and Twitter through the district. But I'll send those shortly. Thanks.
Thank you.
And how is the fundraising going? I'm expecting that the dollars are just rolling in.
Well, I mean, I did check the site earlier today. I think the goal is 2,000. I think we're about 200. So we'll get there.
You'll get there.
We got there. We got time.
That's great. Make sure you wear a hat.
Absolutely.
Okay.
All right. The next item is it's a special month. It is National School Board Month. This gives us an opportunity to recognize the 5 of you for being school board members and all that you do for our district. What I don't think most folks understand is the time and effort that you put in for the schools, your committee work, and the you know, just the various other things that you do for our schools. So we thank you for being board members, and for the 3 of you that are new this year, there's no better way to come into your first official board meeting than with gifts. So we have some things for you. We'll wait for later. I won't bring those over to you now, but we'd like you to come get those. And so we just wanted to let all 5 of you know that we do appreciate you, and we thank you for everything you do for the district.
And I was asking Brian if the artwork was by the administration?
I'm sorry.
By
yes.
the administration, and he said he did not.
No, we definitely, I am certainly, there is an inner artist in me, but I did not do any of this. I'm not an artist. But as you can see that each one of you does have a piece of artwork that was done from each of the elementaries. So we're very grateful for our students and our arts teachers in all of our schools. And so they're great pieces of work. And so please be sure to take those with you at the end as well. All right. Item number 4 under presentation is it asks you to see the addendum, and under the addendum it is it's just a discussion for me to kind of give an update a little bit to the board and to our community about COVID. And I think, you know, first and foremost, what I would like to express is that schools across Ohio have been unfairly burdened by COVID and the mandates that have been put upon us. You know, specifically is the contact tracing, and I'll get into contact tracing a little bit. You know, but I wanted to explain a little bit more about, you know, we chose to do a calamity day on Tuesday. We had high staff and student absences, and this gave us a chance to give them an extra day to try to get kids and staff back in school. And I think it has served us well going into this week with our staffing and certainly with our student attendance as well. I'm going to jump down. I wrote some notes here, but you know, with that staffing piece is we have bus drivers that are sick, and I don't want to confuse things because if you look at the COVID chart on the website, there are no Peterman people with COVID, but that doesn't mean people aren't sick. Or, you know, they take personal days, they have family sick leave, et cetera. So we're at a brink on busing as well. There are other districts in Southwest Ohio that have rolling blackouts on bus days. And so you find out that morning that you don't have a route and you have to somehow get your child to school. We are not there. Our transportation team and Jeff Johnson and company have done a great job. They've been to work, and we've not had that issue yet. But it's day to day, and so I just wanted folks to know that going in. Jeff has formulated a plan with Peterman. And so, if there would be anything of that nature, we would get that out as soon as we can. We'll communicate those items to you. Also, custodians. This week, we have been as high as 10 custodians down, not to mention that we have positions that we've not been able to fill. Jeff has tried to set up 4 interviews. 2 people showed, and then they didn't take the job. So, trying to find help has been a monumental task for us as well. And then as of today, we're down 7 custodians. And the reason I bring that up to you is that being down 7 custodians, we're shuffling and we're moving people, but that could impact elementary rentals, activities that are happening in the elementary schools after school. So Jeff has been in communication with those folks about that possibility and to formulate a plan with them as well. So I'd like to go back to contact tracing. This is a rhetorical question. You don't have to answer, but I'm wondering who contact traced at the Bengals game this past week, and the answer is nobody. This burden that has been placed upon us to be healthcare or public health officials is a daunting task for our principals, our nurses, and our office staff. When I spoke with one of the high school administrators yesterday specifically about his role and how he does contact tracing, he spends about an hour and a half per case trying to contact trace that case. At the junior high, very similar. I spoke to an elementary principal who on one day had to contact trace 8 students. And then so that took up all of her day, and then as she went home, she had to contact trace 4 more. And so I have been angry tweeting at Governor DeWine over the weekend about this because we need some relief. This isn't fair to our community, fair to our employees. And this contact tracing is, it's a pretty big deal. I mean, it's not just in Milford, it's all across Ohio, and I think we're hearing a lot about it. So I wanted to share that piece. Yes, questions anytime? Oh, okay. I think I want to also go back to why we put the masks on our students. I don't think there's anybody inside any of the buildings that wants to see kids in masks. But what's important to know is that there are a set of rules that we have to play by, and those rules keep changing on us almost daily, it feels like. And so as the goalpost moves, it just makes it more difficult for us. And so that's why the decision was made because of the high quarantine, the high contact tracing, et cetera. So I think it's important for folks to know when we do have masks on kids, the contact tracing really becomes lunch. That's the time frame that where kids that they don't have masks on, and we have to do the contact tracing there. So it's just a piece of information. I think our staff has done an amazing job. I was talking to some folks earlier before the board meeting started to talk about the amazing work that no matter what you're doing in the Milford School District as an employee, they have gone above and beyond to make sure that we are in school, and that's what we do. And finally, remote, this idea of going remote is just not good. It's not good for our students' mental health. It is not good for parents. It is good for some. Some parents are able to stay home and to be with their children. There becomes an equity issue with our students when we go remote. So I think that we are trying to do everything we can as a district to stay open and not go remote. So with that, I'm certainly open to questions from the board. Just wanted to give that update about some things about where we are.
I would agree that being in person, is this thing on? Being in person is the goal that we have across the board. And I think in almost going on 3 years of COVID, that Milford has done a really good job of doing what we can to be in school and to have that time in school be what the kids and staff need. Because time in school, contact tracing is not effective, you know, so it's being in school and it's giving as much opportunity we can for education to happen and those sort of things.
Yes, and again, we will continue, if you've not heard me say it before, we will continue to surgically remove classrooms. If we see spread inside a classroom, we will close those classrooms down. We've done that. We did that with Boyd E. Smith last week. You know, we've done it earlier in the school year, and we will continue to do that. We'll do it as needed rather than shutting an entire building down, et cetera. So again, there are many, many reasons why we should be in school and not remote, but I think our students' mental health and just their learning in general is the biggest reason, and that's where we're going to continue to go down that path.
Any questions? Comments?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. This brings us to our first session of public commentary. Just to kind of go over where we are with this, it's a 30-minute period. Each individual gets 3 minutes to speak. Mr. Rabe is the timekeeper over there, and 3 minutes. Start with your name and what your address is, and you've got 3 minutes to do it. Do we have anybody that's registered?
Yes. Rebecca Bourne. Oh. No.
Rebecca Bourne, 1106 Fox Run Road, Milford. I'm back. I wasn't here last month because I suffered a deep loss in my life, but nothing will stop me from fulfilling this assignment. As I pointed out in November, the school board hid behind the ESSER funds and pretended they were listening to us, knowing they would mandate masks as required. Yesterday, the U.S. Department of Education announced they are releasing the last of the ESSER funding to the states. The guidelines for using these funds include: 1, help students get vaccinated; 2, implement test to stay and provide screening testing. That means someone's going to jab your child to make sure that they can stay in school. 3, collaborate with the local health department, which is a corporation without any legal authority or medical license to interfere in your child's health. 4, monitor community spreading. These 4 requirements are coercion, and they create involuntary servitude, both violations of our unalienable rights and listed in the Ohio Constitution. Moving towards mandatory vaccination, don't be fooled, requiring an invasive swab to stay in school, taking advice from a non-authorized, non-medical agency, and holding our kids responsible for community spread is domestic terrorism. Mr. Robb has been very helpful in explaining to me how the ESSER funds are managed. The district works with their cash flow, knowing what money is available through the grant. They must spend the money up front and then get reimbursed. The financial sheet you're going to approve today reflects that Milford has budgeted ESSER funds of $2,500,000, having already spent $1,500,000. If the board should continue using ESSER funds, they will be bound by the 4 directives I just mentioned. Stop using ESSER funds. I charge the Finance Committee to take this source of funds off the table. First, there is no amount of masking, jabbing, or social distancing that will stop this virus. That's been proven. Second, you are participating in this terrorism. The handling of this virus puts tremendous fear in people, creating mental health issues, and then we offer a mandated solution and increase the pressure for the next solution that doesn't work, and it's harmful on many levels. It's abusive. If we're depending on funding by abusing our kids, we are in a moral crisis. And I still can't get over the fact that you don't believe you can say no. And Mr. Spicer, I'm serving you in an affidavit today because you unlawfully and unlegally mandated those masks, so I welcome you to the affidavit and lawsuit party.
Thank you. I expected you to be here today. My question for you is, did you serve one of these to Mike DeWine?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir, we have.
Excellent.
You can tell them no.
Randy Klein.
Good evening to y'all. Randy Klein, 939 Riverside Drive, Milford, Ohio. And I am a district resident and a grandparent of students in the district. Okay, basically, first of all, I appreciate what Mr. Spicer says about Governor DeWine, about contact tracing, because it is a tremendous burden on everyone involved in that. Now, regarding masking, you might recall I came before this board last October on this subject of masking. And I said at that time that the recommended masks would be N95s. This is the bare essentials. The N95s or KN95 masks. I pointed out at the time that no one in the room had that type of mask on. I pointed out that both doctors that were in the room testifying on behalf of masks did not have the correct mask on themselves. Just this week, the CDC came out and said that the only kind of mask you should be wearing is a KN95 or an N95. And I looking around the room here, no one is wearing that here. So I bring this up. Is that okay? Okay, good. Very good. Thank you very much for pointing that out.
Thank you, sir. So am I.
Are you? Well, good. Well, we have, but it's important because we're getting a lot of confusing stuff from our public officials. They're not really giving us good, clear guidance, and parents are especially concerned about it because they want their children to be safe. So we need to do the research well in advance and let people know what the proper way to do things. And it's tough when even your CDC and your Claremont County Board of Health cannot give you clear guidance. And I just want to make a public statement about that. Thank you.
That's the last one I had.
That's it. Okay. Let's move forward then. Item D is the treasurer's report. Mr. Brian Ray.
Thank you, Mr. Miranda. First item on the agenda is a recommendation for the approval of the minutes for the month ending December 31st, 2021.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
Yep. Just a couple items to point out. We are 50% of the year completed. General fund, we're at 46%. Also, we ended the month with a little over $40 million in the general fund cash balance. Interest on the month was $29,000. Total for the year was just shy of $145,000. Also, we had talked about previously about the state foundation formula. The state did finally release that this month on January 7th. So we're digging into that to get more details so that we can present to you clearly a better picture of what type of funding we are getting based upon the new funding formula that came down.
And we'll get something prior to May when we do the next 5-year forecast?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Brian, any surprises halfway through from your perspective? And then the second question is, do you see any perceived problems going forward in the back half?
No, obviously we're under budget right now from where we've seen. There are a couple expenses. Last year, we're probably in the first half of the year, simply timing. Some computer expenses, some furniture expenses, which will probably roll into the second half, which will make up that 50% difference. But as of right now, I really don't see anything major. We will probably have to come back to the board to adjust the appropriations a little bit, simply because we didn't anticipate the money for the Cherry Lucas Field Turf. So we obviously didn't budget that, so obviously at some point we'll come back to the board to add that to the appropriation to budget for that.
When are the bonds going to be sold for the junior high? Oh, did I jump ahead?
You jumped ahead, but I can
Okay.
explain.
Oh.
I can go. I was going to give you an update where we're at with the bonds. Excuse me. So we did meet, did a phone call yesterday, Zoom meeting with Moody's, who does the bond rating. We did the presentation to them yesterday. The gentleman from Moody's then takes that back to a committee. Then the committee decides what the bond rating will be. Currently, we are a AA2 in Moody's bond rating. That is supposed to be released on the 26th of January. Then based upon that bond rating, if everything goes according to plan and it's released on time, the plan is that on February 2nd, we'll actually take the bonds to the market. So as long as there's any hiccups between now and then, February 2nd is when the bonds will be sold. Pending the resolution, that's the next item on the agenda.
That's Groundhog's Day, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Is that a bad omen?
Did Moody's have any direction on our premium pricing?
No, they didn't say anything. That won't happen until we actually get to it. I know some preliminary figures, it's probably going to be a couple $1 million, but nothing yet. No, we'll definitely have a better picture after the February 2nd of where things landed.
And the faster we get these out before bond rates start to rise.
Exactly.
Works in our
So,
benefit.
yeah, obviously that's a
At the
concern
end of the
right
term of
now,
the
but
bond, yep.
yeah, given that we're 2 weeks away, less than 2 weeks away, hopefully there's no major changes between now and then.
Each month, we will bring something to the board, like a presentation about where we are in the bond. This month, there really wasn't a whole lot to report. From the other side of things, Brian, Jeff, and I met with the Ohio Facilities Commission first week of January. It is our initial encounter, initial meeting with them. There will be a request for an architect coming out soon, and we hope to have that architect process in the next probably month, and then within 2 months from now, we're hoping to have that architect in place, at which time we will then begin the process of engaging the community, the board, our staff, et cetera. And the expectation is that we will have full-on input, committee meetings, and anybody that wants to give input will have an opportunity in some fashion to give input, and that'll be a major piece that we want from our architect.
So right now, we're kind of in a holding pattern, waiting on the project number, is that correct? Jeff?
Yes. Yeah, if you want, yes, you can go up.
Then if you could give us a little bit of timing on what they're anticipating and what they're giving us, that would be helpful to the community to know.
As you know, with receiving the funds from OFCC, we are a partner with OFCC. So the architectural selection, the selection of a construction manager, the selection, those things are done in concert. For instance, all those get posted on OFCC's website, so we're kind of at their mercy to post the RFQ for the AE services. They had some things they indicated to us that they needed to go back to Columbus and talk to some of their people about what they needed to make that happen. I will tell you at the end of the meeting, sometimes it's hard to get an exact straight answer out of OFCC, but I basically said, you're telling me that it's probably 2 to 3 months before we have an architect under contract, and they kind of reluctantly said yes. So that's kind of time frame, and that was a couple of weeks ago, but it's probably, end of February, it's sometime in March, I would say. Hopefully, maybe at the March board meeting, we'd have a contract ready to present to the board to be approved, but that's kind of the rough time frame of what we're looking at from what they've indicated to us. Once the RFQ's posted, architectural firms submit their qualifications. Depending on how many we get, which with the size of our project, I would anticipate we'd have a fair amount of interest. Usually there's a scoring process that we have an equal say, as does OFCC. They're scored, there's a rubric, usually gets narrowed down to 3. 3 architectural firms then come in and actually present in person. And then again, there's a scoring process with a rubric where the district gets 2 people, the OFCC gets 2 people, we score those, and whoever comes out on top ends up being your architect. There can be more input. It's not like only 2 people from the district and 2 people from OFCC are in that room for those presentations, but only 2 people officially score the proposals and their presentations.
We're all pretty excited to get started on this, so you're probably going to have a lot of people attending these meetings where we are allowed, and try try not to get in your way, but still understand the process because you've got a relatively new board here.
So, Jeff, the influence of the FCC on these decisions, based on some of the other projects that you've participated in with them, would you say it's a fair 50% participation?
The only projects that we had the direct influence or the direct partnership with OFCC was when we built Boyd and Siteville. During that project, yes, I can say that I felt, that it was truly 50-50. If anything, if there was something that was unequal, I would say there was maybe more influence on the district's part. OFCC wants to make sure they have qualified architect, qualified construction manager. If there's a feel or there's something that the district sees a little more important, as long as the state is confident that that architect, has enough capacity to do the job, that they're qualified, I'm not concerned that they're going to come down with like a big hammer and say, even though you want this firm, you got to use that firm. I'm not concerned about that. Any other questions?
Any other discussions?
All right.
Okay, well, we have a motion on the, we need a motion on it to be made to approve the board reports as presented by Mr. Ray.
Mr. Combs?
Yes.
Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes. Thank you.
The next item is the resolution authorizing the issuance of bonds.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
So obviously, this resolution, since the community passed it and we've done everything up to this point, this resolution officially authorizes us to actually go out and issue the bonds. And again, we mentioned February 2nd is the projected date that will happen.
Any discussion? No? Call the roll.
Mr. Combs?
Yes.
Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes, thank you.
The next item is recommendation to establish a bank account with Fifth Third Securities to account for proceeds from bonds and notes.
I need a motion to approve this.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, so basically all the money that comes in from the sale of the bonds and any sale of the notes, we keep it into a separate investment account so that we can keep track of it and maintain it and know exactly what's in there, what interest is earned off of that money in particular. But any money that's earned on interest can then be rolled back into the project.
Brian, we're restricted to those investments,
Absolutely.
instruments on that piece.
Right, so anytime, as far as what the state does, it restricts us on any type of investments that we can make. We can invest in any type of CD with a bank, but obviously we're limited to the FDIC limit of the 250. We can invest in any type of federal government agency. We can also invest in commercial paper, but there are some restrictions on that in that it has to be AAA rated and it only can be for a certain dollar amount, or I should say certain percentage of your overall portfolio that you can have in commercial paper. So when we look at these investments, we are strictly limited to those three. What we do right now is we'll put that into the investment account, and then once we get the architect and the construction manager on board, what they will do is they will put together what's called a draw schedule, and it will say at certain points of time, this is how much money has to be drawn out of that account to pay the bills. And then we'll set up the investments based upon that draw schedule so that investment matures when it's ready to draw down. So we will do everything in our power to generate as much interest off those notes and bonds, because obviously that's additional dollars that can go back into the building.
And therefore retire the bond earlier.
Different pot of money.
Okay.
When
So
we-
this could be on, if we earn $100, then we have $100 extra to spend on the project?
To spend on the building itself, yes.
And no Bitcoin or anything
No.
like that?
No.
Just checking.
At this point, you probably wouldn't want it, where it's headed.
Okay, any other discussion? Call the roll.
Mr. Combs?
Yes.
Mrs. Basin?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes, thank you.
The next item is the student activity accounts. To appoint the superintendent to be the sign-off officer of all student activity accounts, and the superintendent shall present these programs to the Board of Education once a year. The superintendent will have the authority to approve and/or modify the student activity budgets throughout the year. This is the one carryover item from the organizational meeting.
I was just going to say that. Any discussion here?
First, we need
I just want to say, it looks like a quick vote, but a whole lot of questions went in. I think Brian was about ready to cut me off of emails and phone calls for questions. So a lot of information went into making what looks like a quick decision here.
And just to clarify, this is, the source of this revenue is like, if one of these clubs would have a fundraiser that was not in their original budget plan from the beginning of the year, like if something just came up that
Right.
they wanted to raise funds for, it would be a quick approval instead of having to rewrite their budget and re-present it to the board.
Correct. So we do that, obviously, at the beginning of the year, we do ask them for a budget. And within that budget, they do give us a detailed list of, here's what fundraisers they're going to run, here's what expenses they're going to have out throughout the year. So obviously, that's approval by the superintendent. But if someone happens to have something, we get situations where something happens and they want to make a donation to, say a family, then what they do is they have to adjust their budget, and they basically resubmit that through the process. And then, obviously, that goes through the process a lot quicker than having to take that, then bring that back to the board and tell them, oh, you have to wait a month before you can access your funds, so on and so forth. So that's kind of where some of this sign-off comes in.
Actually, I do have one more comment. So in going back and forth with Brian a lot, I think we kind of concluded that there might need to be some cleanup of policy, the way things are written. There's kind of some conflicting stuff in different policies that kind of crisscross each other.
Correct. Yeah.
So maybe we could look at
Yeah, we'll pull those.
cleaning up
and-
that
and,
policy.
We'll get with Paul here? Yeah, so Paul basically works with all the policies, and I'll get with Paul, and we'll get with OSBA to kind of clean those up.
And Brian, just quickly, you have monthly reporting on this account, correct, in your office?
Correct. So every account that we have, when we look at it on the board reports, we list it as student activities, but under it, there's probably, off the top of my head, 30 different accounts that all roll into that figure. And basically what we're doing is we refer to them as fund. Every student activity group has its own fund. So therefore, we track their expenses, we track their revenues, we know what their cash balance is. And then the other piece of doing it that way is that if the money is raised for National Honor Society, the expenses are only for National Honor Society expenses. So yes, we do make sure we track that, and even the approval processes that go through as far as submitting any type of expense has to come from that advisor to that group. So yes.
And we certainly recognize, and I know you guys haven't been through a policy meeting cycle yet, but these are living documents. When we bring them in, I believe we do that quarterly, is that not right?
That is correct, they're quarterly.
We do it quarterly. There's a list. I mean, it's not one or two, it's more like a dozen. So they're living documents. We're always open to making them better, making them more streamlined, and coordinating them one with another. So no issues there. Okay. Any other comments? Seeing none, call a roll.
No,
Need a
we
mo- need a
don't
motion
have
first.
motions yet.
Oh, we don't have a motion yet, I'm sorry.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll.
Mr. Combs? Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
Yes?
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we move on to item E, Superintendent Business. Superintendent John Spicer.
Thank you, President Miranda, members of the board. Under item E, number 1, we are asking for your approval of policy IKF, graduation requirements. This is the second reading of this policy. This is in regards to financial literacy.
Okay, I need a motion to approve policy IKF.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion here?
This goes into effect August, next.
Yeah, this
school
goes
year.
into effect. Paul has worked with 8th grade and 9th grade to come up with a great plan for us and financial literacy. So we're moving along. As I think we discussed in committee last week, this is, while it's a great course, all kids should have financial literacy. There's another unfunded mandate. When I say unfunded, that's not exactly true. We do get $500 to help train someone if they need it. Again, great course for our kids. Every student should have financial literacy, and everybody needs a little Dave Ramsey.
And John, this was a state mandate, correct? All schools, public schools in the state.
Yes. Yes, sir.
And hopefully we're able to make something worthwhile out of that. I've already offered a couple of suggestions, and there are some things that are boilerplate, but there are some things we may be able to tailor to make it a little bit more useful for our kids in the long run.
Absolutely.
Okay, any other discussion? Call the roll.
Mr. Combs?
Yes.
Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes, thank you. We now move on to item F, which is Human Resources Business. Superintendent John Spicer.
Thank you, President Miranda, members of the board. Under certified personnel approvals, asking for your approval of item A1 and B1.
Okay, we need a motion to approve item F, items items 1A and B.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Call the roll.
Mr. Combs? Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes, thank you.
Under classified personnel items, asking for your approval of item A, 1 through 4, B, number 1, C, 1 and 2, D, 1 and 2, and E, number 1.
Okay, so we need a motion for item F. This is number 2, A through E.
So moved.
Need a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Call the roll.
Mr. Combs?
Yes.
Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes, thank you.
Under item number 3, supplemental personnel approvals, I'm asking for your approval of items A, 1 through 3. There's an addendum for for letter A, 1 through 3. That's a part of the addendum. Can we flip back to the addendum? Where's Vartech? So that folks can see that. Under B1 there.
It's not that easy to do in this form.
Thank you. Yeah, this format's clunky, but just want folks to see it. Asking for your approval of item B, 1 through 8. That's also on the addendum. And item C, 1 through 6.
Okay, so we need an approval for supplemental personnel contracts. That's item F3, A through C.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Call the roll.
Really quickly.
There's a question.
Go ahead.
Can you give a brief description of Hope Squad for the group, please? I remember the presentation, and I thought.
Yes. Hope Squad is, yes, sir. So Hope Squad is, we have it in the junior high and high school. We do have a group at Pattison, and we're trying to grow Hope Squad. So what is Hope Squad? Hope Squad is a peer-evaluated, or not evaluated, excuse me, peer-generated group of students that can help others with their mental health. They're not trained to provide mental health, but trained to, they can see signs, talk with them, get them in touch with the proper folks, if you will. That's the Reader's Digest version of what Hope Squad is. It's a great group. Will Cates really assists. He's our mental health coordinator, assists in that program. I think it's been a great program for us. And I think most importantly is that the students that are in Hope Squad are nominated and identified by their peers as someone that's trustworthy, that you could always go to. So we're very proud to be part of Hope Squad. Yes, sir.
Okay, any other comments? Now call the roll.
Mr. Combs?
Yes.
Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes, thank you.
Under item 4, Family Child Care Leave Act approval, item A, 1 and 2, please. Asking for your approval.
We need a motion for item F, number 4A, 1 and 2.
So moved.
Discussion? Call the roll.
Mr. Combs?
Yes.
Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes, thank you. Okay, now we're going to go ahead now to item G, curriculum and instruction, Superintendent John Spicer.
Thank you, President Miranda. Members of the board, under curriculum instruction, we do have this evening approval of the foreign exchange student, Julius Hesse. He will attend Milford High School as an 11th grade student. He is from Hallenberg, Germany, likes theater, drama, played tuba in the symphonic orchestra, and also loves piano. So we're asking for your approval.
Okay, thank you.
So moved.
Item G, approval of foreign exchange student, item 1.
So
A.
moved.
Second.
Is
Discussion?
this our first this year?
Paul,
for-
this
for
is
next
number
year?
1, correct?
This is
This is
number
one for
year.
next year out of 4.
Four
The
spots.
board did make a change to add an additional one. And so we're very excited. I think the more students we can have, the better experiences that our students get. There's nothing better than world travel. If you can't go world traveling, but we can bring those folks to us, and I think it's a great experience for them, and will hopefully spark some interest in maybe some of our students doing some foreign exchange as well.
I think it's great, too, that it's a German student, and we have a German program here. I think it's a great opportunity for the students to interact with this exchange student.
I did have a conversation yesterday with Frau Goff, our German teacher at the high school. She's very excited. It's probably Julius. Julius is probably the pronunciation, so I'm excited for him as well. I took 4 years of German in high school myself. I probably forgot 3. But I'm excited for him to come as well and to have some conversation, and we're excited as well. So is she.
Okay, anything else? Call the roll.
Mr. Combs?
Yes.
Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes, thank you.
Under item 2, course additions to Milford High School, asking for your approval of the 7 courses listed: poetry, reading, and writing, young adult award winners, English foundations, principles of the biomedical sciences, part of Project Lead the Way, as well as human body systems and medical interventions, and capstone course biomedical innovation.
Okay, we need a motion on item G, number 2.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
I would just like to point out, we had some discussion about this project Lead the Way in our curriculum committee, and it's just a really great opportunity for our students. And it really introduces them into biomedics, and which is just such a burgeoning field, and I think that it sets them up for success for the future, and it's just a really, really wonderful opportunity.
So are any of these courses replacing an existing course?
Paul, you can go ahead and speak to some of those specifics.
Paul can't wait.
So the poetry, reading, and writing and young adult winners, award winners will be additions. We moved to quarter electives at the high school, which you're allowed to issue quarter Carnegie units. So they're great pairs with creative reading and writing. Then poetry is a good pair. We did get rid of myths and monsters. Not getting rid of it, but just not going to offer it. The way we staff typically is we staff on student interest, so there was interest waning in those areas. So to be clear, we are asking for you to add these, but if we don't have interest, we don't run them. So when we do our course optioning, which will happen after you approve this courses or ask us, or say we don't approve them, the counselors will then push out the course guide and students will option. The next step is that the administration in both the junior high and the high school, they'll bring the numbers to human resources and myself, and we'll look. If we have, for example, let's say poetry, reading, and writing only has 8 kids in it, it's not a good use of our staff. So we staff based on student interest. We have a couple courses at the high school. Josh is here. AP Music Theory. We were having 4 to 6 kids. It's very specialized, so we made the decision to run that every other year, which means potentially you could have 12 to 15 students in that. So Myths and Monsters is coming out, adding these 2. And then English Foundations, we're renaming and just working on the description a little bit. We want to support students who, we have MAP data now. We've prescribed, or we have MAP, which is foundational, gives us growth, it tells us where our kids are, gives us projections on the state test. We jump back into that this year. Teachers in the 8th grade will give our English department some of that data. Students who are on the bubble or just need an extra dose of support will be in English Foundations, as well as the same thing from 9th to 10th grade. Why that's important is because that 10th grade end of course exam is a gateway. So the state went from all these tests to the 2 most important ones are Algebra 1 and English 2, which is your 10th grade year. So those, if you don't meet proficiency or there's a score below proficiency, sort of like a cutoff, if you don't meet that, like the 3rd grade guarantee, we have to find an alternate way for you to graduate, or we give you a dose of intervention and you get there when you get there. So the Project Lead the Way courses, numbers 4 through 7, those will be satellite through the Great Oaks, which the benefit is that program is offered here. It is sponsored by the Great Oaks. The funding works to our advantage. The formula is 1/7 of the day. Since we have 7 bells, we hand over 1/7 of the students' funding formula. However, they are responsible for the staff. They are responsible for all the supplies in the room. They are responsible for the technology. They bring and do everything. And so that'll be another satellite program like DECA, the marketing, TPA, the Project Lead the Way with the engineering, and then biomedical, the biomedical science. We were in the School of Business at one time, but we had waning interest in that. We did reach out to them. We feel like this is a great pairing with the engineering piece of Project Lead the Way, but you don't have to do them both. They can live separately. And students can earn a credential, which is another pathway to graduation. You can earn SEALs, credentials. If you don't hit benchmark, you earn a credential. That's another pathway for you to graduate. And those credentials are just as valuable. Our students who go to the Great Oaks full-time or half-time, they're earning career credentials in those state-sponsored areas.
And I know we talked about this at our committee meeting, but there is financial incentive or a financial benefit of these classes, but the counselors are not leading kids to these in lieu of our regular science classes to save money, correct?
Excellent point. Thank you. We don't drive the kids to these courses to take from our own staff or to try to, well, the key word that Brian uses, supplant, so we'll use this teacher over here. But these are advanced sciences, so we'll have some bleed from like anatomy and physiology. We'll have some bleed from forensics, but it won't save an employee. It may save a section, a half a section, but we don't try to compete. So thank you for bringing up what we discussed in committee.
Okay, any other discussion? Let's call the roll.
Mr. Combs? Yes. Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes, thank you.
Under item 3, course additions for the junior high, we're asking for your approval of number 1, financial literacy.
Okay, we need a motion to approve item G3, number 1 there, financial literacy.
So moved.
Oh, second.
Discussion? I think we hit on this earlier. Call the roll.
Mr. Combs? Yes. Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes, thank you. Okay, this brings us to item H, the concluding items for the Board of Education for tonight, and it brings us to our second public participation.
I do have Patricia, and I apologize. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Mike.
Thank you. Good evening, Board of Education and Superintendent Spicer. My name is Dr. Patricia Colapietra, and I live at 1247 Rose Street Drive, Milford, Ohio. First of all, I would like to share my sincere appreciation to Superintendent Spicer for implementing the mask mandate and the support shown to him by the Board of Education members in light of the current surge of COVID-19 Omicron variant, which has caused significant overload in our already burdened medical system. Another reason to celebrate, in despite of the difficult times, is the recent announcement, as of the 18th of this month, by the U.S. Department of Education, that $122 billion have been distributed to 50 states, D.C., and Puerto Rico, with the American Rescue Plan's ESSER funds. The plans been described by the Ohio Department of Education includes many issues, but the Milford webpage that hasn't been updated since June 24th, 2021. And as a doctor who deeply cares for the health of my community, I would like to ask the Board of Education members and Superintendent to discuss resource allocation to COVID-19 mitigation, testing, and vaccination efforts. I'm sure you all have looked into the guidelines and the recommendations published by the U.S. Department of Education online that details how the funds can be used to provide incentive, both for the COVID-19 vaccination and student testing, but I have a copy available for each one of you. I would appreciate if you could read it and maybe bring it up for discussion at a future time. Lastly, I would like to remind you of two things. One, any concerns aboard about forced vaccination and testing are simply not true. Minors need parental or guardian consent, and Milford takes this issue very seriously, as any mom, like me, who had to leave work in a hurry due to expired medication permission can attest to you. And the second thing is, yes, this is about equity. Although per CDC, Claremont County has a low social vulnerability index, the children and families that will mostly benefit from vaccination and testing assistance through the school district are the ones who do not have access or financial means to obtain them elsewhere. Maybe they're the most vulnerable socioeconomically in our society who also cannot afford to miss school and work. Maybe the racial and ethnic minorities and immigrants in our school district. We're here. Claremont County only has 58.4% of the population 5 years old and above vaccinated. The medical system is overloaded, and we're asking for help. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Moving right ahead, our next regular board meeting is February the 17th, 2022. It will be here in this room, which is at the Milford School Administration Office, 1099 State Route 131, Milford, Ohio 45150. We now have an opportunity for some open discussion here. Anybody has anything? I have one. I've kind of, as I took over this role, one of the things I wanted to do is I wanted to call attention to certain things that might be a little bit under-publicized. Tomorrow evening, the Milford High School Athletic Hall of Fame is inducting their class of 2022. It will be at the high school. It will be at the basketball arena there, the Fly Center. Milford is playing Lebanon, and typically the way this works is about 7 o'clock when the JV game is over. We take a little bit longer pause between the two games to have people be there, and it's a great game. You get to see the basketball team. You also get to see a really cool induction ceremony. This year we have 3 people going into the Hall of Fame. One is Craig Scott, who participated in wrestling while he was here and was a fantastic wrestler. We have Gary Tamaris, who was the coach of swim, dive, and water polo for many years. And we have Pat Bunnell, who is a personal favorite of mine as a contributor. Pat passed away a couple of years ago. She was the craft show coordinator for the fantastic craft show that we have every first Saturday of December over here. And she was missed, and her grandson has taken over that program, and and I think he will be accepting in her place. So it's a wonderful opportunity to get out and see some people from the past and honor them in a way that's right and proper. So if you can attend that, that's tomorrow evening at the Fly Center, approximately 7 o'clock, depending on how many overtimes they go at JV. We've seen as many as 3, and it's been a lot later, but we look forward to that and hope that as many of you can come out as possible. Thank you very much. Anything else? Okay, we come to item 4 here, which is I need a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
Second.
I don't think there's going to be any discussion here, so let's call the roll.
Mr. Combs? Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes, thank you and good night.